get his plug and all that stuff. He said extensions.
Okay, let's just go. Let's just go. On the way in. On the way in. Sekejap, I'm setting up the.
You know what's been playing in my mind? Your pasal lah, the Sumanda song.
Okay, wait. I want to go live now. Okay? We can just chit-chat lah for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, I just go live and then we chit-chat. Right, Omar, we are live on Facebook, but let's wait for Darren. You were saying just now?
Oh yeah.
Right,
no.
Omar, we are live on Facebook.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me turn down my laptop. Okay, you like my background?
Yeah, you're like so in sync with your bald head.
Yeah,
it reminds me of
Star Trek.
Star Trek, yeah. Star Wars.
Star Wars. Wait. Are you talking about Jean-Luc Picard, Star Trek, or Yoda of Star Wars?
Yeah, only that the modern version because you're wearing your dress shirt.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm having it on, well, a couple of reasons. One of which is SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, rocket company, and NASA, the North American Space Agency. They have collaborated and they've sent 2 people to space, to the space station.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you mentioned about it. So I thought they have to postpone or they have to.
It was postponed, but they took off. Was it yesterday? Now I'm not sure. But they've landed, not landed. They have arrived at the space station in space. You know, so Americans have not gone into space for about 10 years already.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a long time. Yes. So
what's
now
the
they're
update?
back. And sorry.
What's the update? They have arrived and then.
Yeah, they've arrived. So they've gone into the space station. It's been very successful. And the amazing thing is about the space suit. It really doesn't look like the space suit that astronauts used to wear in the old days. You know, big bulky. Yeah, it looks nice and trim. It looks stylish.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Interesting.
Yeah. Right. So everything was Elon Musk. You know, when they put on the suit and they call it suit that help astronauts put their suits. That's how technical it is, right? And then they were brought into the car, into a Tesla car. And what's interesting is the spacesuit has an umbilical cord. You know, it has a cord, and which is attached to the suit, and The other part is attached to the car, which blows in cool air. Yeah, so while
Oh.
they're driving from wherever they are, from the base to the launch pad, they're sitting in the car in their spacesuit being cooled through their umbilical cord.
Oh, okay.
You know, yeah, so interesting. And everything looks so stylish compared to the old days.
Oh, I
So they
should,
go up
yeah, we haven't seen that.
tower.
It's not as
Yeah,
bulky as before, as in like with those helmet and stuff, no?
exactly. It's not as bulky as before. Yeah.
Okay. So just to acknowledge our audience, thank you so much. We have quite a number of viewers already. We have not started because we are waiting for our friend Darren. He is experiencing some technical problem at the moment, but we'll start in a short while, probably in 3 or 4 minutes time or 5 minutes time. But in the meantime, me and Omar, we were just chit-chatting around what's happening. Also because look at Omar's background. He asked me, do I like the background? Yes, yes, I said, because it's so matching with the bald head of Omar.
Yeah, I know, I get that a lot. You know, somebody just WhatsApp me. Since the last episode that we did about balding men,
All right.
I get a lot of comments now. Somebody just texted me. There was a picture of several bald men, and then he says, "Hey, the guy in the middle looks like you." And I said, "Yeah, every bald guy looks alike."
But you're right, bald men, they are look alike. In fact, we have a few friends. Okay, I can mention the name. We have you, Omar. We have Juara, and also who
Yeah.
else? Jeff.
Jeff, when he shaves it.
Yeah, there's another
Oh,
one.
another Jeff Chow.
Jeff Chia, yeah.
So sometimes the three of us appear together, yeah.
In fact, it's quite spooky sometimes when I post our pictures on my Facebook, and it will automatically tag it's either you or Juara.
Yeah. Juara and I have this interesting arrangement. When I support his training, he will introduce himself, and then he'll get all the facilitators, the rest of the team to introduce. So I'll be next, and then Juara will say, "Jangan betulkan TV Anda," because we kind of look alike.
All right. So I'm not sure what is happening to Darren. Let me text him.
Yeah.
Oh, he couldn't get in for some reason.
Oh dear. Okay. Okay. Well, we can just continue on with the previous.
Right. So we can just continue. Maybe you can let me introduce our session. You can text Darren. In the meantime, he can just keep on trying to log in. Yeah. So yeah, let's start. Okay. Darren is here. Darren is here.
Okay, great.
And he's joining. All right. Darren, you are in.
Hey guys.
Hi, Darren. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so you managed.
Excellent.
Thank you. So let's start the session. We started this earlier. Well, we gone live earlier, probably like 5 minutes ago, but we have not introduced our topic today. So let me start. To our viewers, thank you so much for joining in. Welcome to Point of View series, 19 episode this time. My name is Jacqueline Joannis. I'll be hosting the session today, but I'm not the only host. As usual, we have Sheikh Omar to host the session today, right? And as usual, every Wednesday we are honored to have Darren Suresh, right? And first of all, thank you so much, Darren. Thank you for this another 1 hour of your precious Wednesday. Thank you so much for making again today.
Thank you.
Almost, yeah, almost. So to all viewers, once again, thank you so much for your support. And again, I would like to acknowledge our live viewers. We had a few live viewers earlier. Yeah, we still do have, but thank you so much for dropping by. We hope that however long you choose to be with us, you'll gain something out of it. And in this context, talking about gaining, it's really around you will learn something out of our session, out of this session. And I believe it works in two ways. You can learn by watching us or listening to us, but you can also, most importantly, I think, it'll be much more impactful if you can participate. So how can you participate is by asking questions. You can put in your questions in the comment section, or you can also PM us. Not only questions, but you are welcome to share your opinion around the topic today, right? So it can be done anytime, basically, because this recording will be on my wall until Facebook decide not to do so. So as usual, let's introduce ourselves. Omar, Darren, and I are corporate trainers. We are also coaches, mentors, and or speakers in our own specialization. So let's hear from each one of us about a specific area. So let's start with Omar.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. One of the things that intrigues me is conversations can determine our lives. And when I was in corporate, I noticed that people who know how to converse well tend to get ahead. And and it's become a study for me. And now what I do is I help people with develop confidence with conversations. I also help them understand the elements within conversations. Yeah, so basically that's what I do. I call myself a conversation coach, but I'm also learning at the same time. Darren?
Thank you, Omar. Hi guys, my name is Darren Suresh, owner or founder of the company called Awesome Tribes. I focus a lot on the tribing purposes of training. So I indulge myself in leadership, in customer service, in communication. Of course, I do my fair bit of team engagements and team building as well. And I'm a big fan of gamifications, and I create and run my own gamifications for various levels of people as well. So that's what I do. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Darren. And about myself, my deep interest revolves around image and professional development. I'm an image consultant. My area of focus are appearance, behavior, and communication along the line of image branding, personal and professional growth and development. So today is our 19th episode. So let me reiterate the intention behind the session. The purpose of this session is really around to enlighten each other and hopefully along the line of getting the light bulb moment that perhaps we all could act upon for the betterment of ourselves and also for others around us. So today's topic is the part 3 of everyone can be an engaging conversationalist. So to continue on, let me hand over the session to Omar. Omar?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So 3 sessions ago, we started off with what was some of the elements that makes a conversation engaging, and we came up with the 3 C's, and the 3 C's stand for curiosity is one. When you're curious about the topic or about the other person, you can ask a lot of questions, and that keeps the conversation going. You also need to be able to care when you speak to the other person. Care meaning you take a deep interest in what the other person is all about or how they feel. And the third one is compassion, right, Darren?
Sorry?
Yes, it's
the third one is compassion. Yeah, it's compassion. And so we came up with the 3 C's, and this was basically about how to engage with someone. Yeah. The second topic, in the second episode, we talked about different personalities. Now, different personalities tend to focus on different things, right? And we came up with 4 general personality types. And the 4 general personality types are a dominant type of a personality, an influencer type of a personality, a supporter type, and a compliant type. You know, a compliant type is someone who is very analytical, and they like to comply, they follow rules. So essentially there's 4 different types. We follow the model called DISC. And the reason I like this model is it's easy to explain, it's easy to understand. Now, obviously, we don't fall into one category completely. We're always a mixed bag of all these different things. You know, so we're combining with how do you engage someone in terms of the 3 C's, and also in understanding their personalities. When you understand their personalities, you know that different subjects or different topics interest them. So for instance, if I were to talk to someone who is a dominant person is more interested in results, money, how to get things done, performance, efficiency, things like that. They care, I wouldn't say they don't care at all, but they don't care too much, or rather they don't get too much into discussions about feelings, right? They're not into talking about, hey, times are tough. They don't like things like that. They like to talk about what can we do to make the situation better, to overcome the situation. So the dominant person likes those kind of stuff. They like to solve problems, and they don't like to whine, for instance. They don't like to talk about feelings. An analytical person likes to go into details, right? So the different personalities, if you understand what they're all about, it really helps you keep the communication going. Now, there's no fixed and fast rule, because some people would ask me, which one do you apply? There's no fixed and fast rule. What's important here is your awareness. You're aware that there are the elements of the 3 C's. You're also aware that there are different personality types. So, you kind of have to read the situation and apply this awareness and react accordingly. Today, we are going to be looking at another dimension about conversations. And this dimension is something that Darren will be talking about, and is a very interesting dimension. And so all of these things color the conversation. It adds up to how we can have engaging conversations. Now, of course, there are more things about conversations, because conversation is a skill, but it really helps if you understand the mechanics or the thinking behind conversations, because it makes you more aware. Okay, so Darren, we had, you gave us a couple of tests. You're always coming out with tests for us. So take it away. Let's hear what you got.
All right, thanks, Omar. Sorry I was a bit late. I had some technical issues on my plugs and all that. So suddenly the power was not working. So I look a little bit messy, like I just had a wrestling match. So forgive me for that. And I like your background, Omar. Looks like you're an astronaut in space. All right. Without your reading.
We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Without your
because,
yeah. Correct. Without your helmet on. So all right. So basically, like what Omar said, last week we used the DISC personality profiling platform to talk about, once if you know how to profile someone, how else can you then move from having conversations with different kinds of personality, or personality with different kinds of combinations, which is quite relevant these days. And I think that we're not trying to make, sometimes a comment which I had offline was, why are you guys trying to make having conversations so difficult? I say it's not about trying to make it more difficult, it's about learning the tools and the skill sets to make it more easy, right? Because people misunderstand that conversation should just be free flow and without any barriers or limitations. I say, yes, it can go there, but once you know certain tools and all that can help you along the way, you probably have a more fulfilling conversation with people, and you can achieve much better. So the one that we want to focus on today is VAKAD. Firstly, don't worry, VAKAD is not any kind of a disease out there. So nowadays people are afraid of acronyms because they might stand for something bad, right? So VAKAD is actually been around a long time. Yeah, it's been around a long time. It's been around a long time. So basically, it stands for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and auditory digital. That's the AD. So when you put it together, it calls VAKAD for short. Now, VAKAD has been used in various levels of training and teaching. It's been around for quite some time. Unfortunately, in Malaysia, as per normal, the VAKAD system is not something which is known to everyone. I would expect that the teachers and the educators out there would know about VAKAD, but you'll be surprised that many still may not be very familiar or not implemented in even our basic government schools. So how does knowing your VAKAD helps you to have better conversations? Well, because if you are a visual person, then you would then tend to go or lean towards certain words, or you connect to different kind of words much better. If you're an auditory person, you tend to use that kind of words differently as well and see things differently as well. If you're a kinesthetic person, you also tend to be a little bit different compared to the other two. And of course, these days, ever since 2005, the AD has been added on. It was just VAK, like what Jack previously did, the one online, which is just VAK, but now the AD has been added on because there's been a new dimension to learning, which is AD is actually more towards reflective learning. So if you're talking about visual, all right, so a visual person tends to focus on pictures, yeah, tends to focus on things which is picture. Auditory person focuses on what they hear, and a kinesthetic person focuses on what they can do. So an AD person focuses on what they reflect. They take a little bit time to think about, okay, how does this impact me? How does this impact the people around me? What can I do differently and all that? So an AD person tends to go there. If you guys look back at your both of your results, both of you have the AD has number one highest. Agree? Yeah, number one
Yeah.
highest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right,
So,
Darren.
yeah. Okay, so that means that both of you are reflective thinkers first. Reflective thinkers first. That means whatever happens to you, you tend to reflect upon a bigger picture. You tend to reflect upon whether this makes sense to you, whether it's logical, whether it impacts you, whether it impacts other people. So I noticed that when the VAK will graduate eventually, most adults, about 65 to 70% of adults, will have the AD as number one, surprisingly. Whenever I do this in a class of young adults, I notice that close to 65-70% of them will be AD first and then the others. Doesn't matter what's the others, which is visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, but they tend to lean towards being AD. This is something which is apparent with just adults, whereby children may not have the AD. So if you do this assessment with kids, just take off the AD, don't do the AD, the VAK is fine, which is the previous assessment which Jack did, but that one is more towards an adult as well. But there are some assessments out there for children. So if you look at an example of your results, all right? So if I'm going to Omar's results, Omar is AD in...
Hang on, Darren.
Yeah.
Darren, come out.
Yeah.
Can we just take a step back and perhaps position what is VAK AD all about? Is this a learning style? Is this what people pay attention to when they speak or when they look at things? Or, so I think it helps to understand, like for instance, V person is visual. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that he's attracted to visual things or visual language? Could you elaborate on that?
Okay, Ken. Thanks, Omar. So the VAK AD is actually identifying your learning styles. How do you learn? So we learn through various ways, and this is actually one of the ways where we identify how does a person learn. So like what Omar mentioned, the V stands for visual. So if you are rated as visual as number one highest, that means your focus will be more towards what you see. I give you an example for you to further understand. The education system in Malaysia, the government school system which we have gone through, is actually much suited for women or for girls. It's designed for girls. Why? Let me explain why. Because you need to see what the teacher is doing, you need to listen. That's how the system of the government school works. Very little on kinesthetic, more towards visual and auditory. So hence why boys don't do very well in the primary school. They might do okay in a secondary school, but they do much better in university, because in university, there's a lot of kinesthetic value. And by default, boys are more kinesthetic by nature. They like to just do things. So a visual person would learn by visual aspects. They like to see pictures. They are drawn in by the picture that you create in their heads, right? So the certain connecting words that you use with them. For example, if you want to talk to a visual person, the keywords could be something like, hey, Omar, can you imagine team building in Phuket right now. The sand, the sun, the wind. It'll be beautiful, man. And immediately a person who's visual will capture that picture in their head. A
So
visual aspect of that picture.
Darren, hang on there. Let's go one by one, because let's also relate when we are in conversation with a person. So if you're saying that if we are hearing these words, like for example, can you imagine, or I visualize this thing, and what do you think about this, or what do you see, right? So that's where then you can catch, or you might have the idea of this person might be able to understand you better if you speak the language of a V person or a visual person. Am I right to say that?
Right, you're right. So it's about listening to the words they use, right? It's not so much about you, it's about them using words by default. But of course, just like DISC, there's not just one profile to worry about, because a person can be a combination of all four. So it's just that what is the most words, or what kind of words do they associate themselves most with? Then you go with that. So a possibility that their visual could be the highest. Then you use more words like that to connect to them better. So an auditory person would be using words like, I heard that this exam is going to be tough. Did you hear? Did you hear what happened to Samantha the other day? So if they start using keywords where there's auditory aspect, then you might then define them to be more towards auditory. Then you start to use those kind of words with them as well. But once again, remember the catch is that what are the words that they use the most? And then of course, a kinesthetic person would be using words like,
Hang on there. Let's go A, yeah, auditory. I've experienced a friend she's really high in A. I noticed that when I'm talking to her, she will not look at you straight on your face or your eye contact. She'll like looking around, but yeah, she can actually catch what you say. And in fact, when we are attending a program, she can easily remember what the teacher is saying or the instructor was saying. Even though she wasn't looking at the instructor, she will just do her own thing, and then So I think those are the key signs that you can also catch that this person might be inclined, or the inclination is more towards A.
yes, correct. It can also be that. A person who listens to you by not having, eye to eye contact, that's fine. But they listen and they can. Okay, if we were to give you an example of all three, right? All three or all four, then maybe everyone will understand this better. Let's take an example or an analogy of going to watch a movie. Okay, all four are going into a cinema and watching a movie, so that's easier to understand. So we cover all four at one time. When the movie is done, when you come out from the movie, when you're having a discussion about the movie, a visual person will repeat this kind of words or say. So if you ask the person, so what do you think about the movie? Then the visual person might use things like, you know what? You know that part when they were in Switzerland, when they were running on the ice? Did you notice the goose were chasing them and the ice at the back of the goose were cracking and the rest of us will go blur? Will go blur. Huh? You mean there was that part there? The visual person catches moments like this. An auditorial person would actually capture the dialogue of the movie. You know that part when actually Master Yoda said to Luke Skywalker in Star Wars something like, try not, just do. And you go like, which part? I didn't hear that. So an auditory person would probably memorize dialogues. And then the kinesthetic person would be a bit different, and you say, hey, what do you think of the movie? Oh man, I enjoyed the popcorn. Popcorn. So the kinesthetic person is about the feel. It's about being together. It's not so much about the movie anymore. And then the AD person, when you go to them and say, so what do you think of the movie? And the AD person will go, I don't know. You know what? There was a lot of parts of the movie that I need to rethink again because it's very deep. Then you go like, it was not deep. It was just a normal movie. Why are you? So hence the example of A, V, A, K, A, D in how they respond to a situation like going to a movie. So that would actually get people to better understand what do you mean by people who are visual, people who are auditory, and kinesthetic, and of course auditory digital. Would that be a better explanation?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
Yeah.
good. And it reminds me of a friend, the same friend who is very high in audio or auditory.
Mm.
She will remember lyrics like super good. And when we go for karaoke, she can remember lyrics without looking at the subtitle.
Yes,
Yeah,
that would be a very clear sign that she's
yeah.
auditory. Also, auditory person, when they are learning, what they do is that they tend to write things down a lot. They
Mm-hmm.
tend to write things down a lot. They take more notes than most people do. A visual person will take notes, but they make their notes very colorful.
Mm.
I think your friend Nina is like that, right? I think I saw her notes previously and it was
Lina,
full of
it's
colors and
Lina.
stuff
Lina.
like that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then a person who's kinesthetic will not take notes, will borrow other people's notes and photostat them.
That's me. Lina, nanti
Yeah.
nak photostat nota. Oma,
Yeah.
Oma nanti ambil picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you start to see that. So if you look at what is the default for men and women, so if the default for men and women is, but I'm not saying that I'm not generalizing. I'm not saying that women are like that, men are like, but by default, by learning, by culture, by genetics, women tends to be more visual and auditory.
Mm.
That means they see, they listen, they learn. Whereby men, we are more visual and kinesthetic. Our auditory by default is the lowest. That's why they say men don't listen. We still don't. Right? So hence why the learning style. So how does that relate to learning style? That means if a teacher teaches something or having a conversation with the students, is she having the right conversation with the right group?
Mm.
Exactly.
Because the teacher can be someone who understands, oh, girls are visual and auditory. So she said, okay, tengok apa cikgu buat sekarang. Murid-murid buka muka surat 52. Cikgu cakap, murid tulis. Remember the good old days when teachers used to do that? You know
Yeah.
what? The girls will usually write fantastic notes. I would be like, my hand will get tired after 5 minutes. You
Yeah.
see what I mean? So the learning styles are different, whereby a kinesthetic person would then learn through activities and games. That's why if you give a 10-year-old boy a football and you tell them, go to the field and play football, for them, that's the greatest learning in the world.
Right.
Because football teaches you the game of life. You
Exactly.
learn
So,
resource management, you learn leadership, you learn problem solving, you learn about team dynamics, everything in one game. And
exactly.
kinesthetic people learn to have it. So it's different. So when you have conversations with people, you need to learn to identify the VA, at least the VAK in them. The AD is different. The VAK, so that you can move towards a better conversation with people with these different learning styles.
Right. So I have a question for Omar because what Darren mentioned just now is very comprehensive around understanding learning style, which is I think is very significant in our day-to-day encounters with individuals, right?
Right.
Now I'm wondering around how do we use this knowledge
Mm,
about learning style in our day-to-day conversation with others, right?
great.
Because not always that we are in a situation where we are imparting or we are teaching, but can it be used? Okay, Omar.
To carry a conversation, exactly. So that this is where these tips are leading to. So let's go back to the movie, right? So the clue is if you're with a bunch of people, and let's say someone is talking about, did you see this part? Did you see that part? Right? So chances are they're more visual because they're talking about seeing. So that's your first clue. If I wanted to have an engagement with this person, I shouldn't be. It's not that I shouldn't be, but I need to focus more about the visuals of the movie, right? So let's say I'm meeting the two of you for the first time, and we're watching a movie, and I want to have an engaging conversation. And let's say, Jack, you're very visual, so I'm not going to be talking to you about the music. What did this person say? I'll be talking about things like, what did you think about the planet, the scenery, right? I'll be saying things like, don't you think the spaceship looks stylish, right? I'll be talking about colors. So when I bring those things up, it will catch you because those are the things you notice, right? Whereas if I were to talk about the music, the sounds and things like that, you got nothing to say because you didn't pay attention to them. So this is how you can actually get the conversation going, right? So just to backtrack a little bit, what Darren is saying is you can actually get a clue about what the person is paying attention to by the choice of words that they use. So if Jack is talking about the scenery, then I know. If she's talking about the scenery a lot, then I know she's more visual, so I need to talk about the visuals. Then if Darren is more kinesthetic, he's going to be talking about the action, the fight scene and stuff like that. Then I can talk about that. Right? So this is how you apply this knowledge in order to be able to sustain the conversation and to be fully engaged. Yeah. Does that help you use this? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Omar. And I like when Darren mentioned around it's not about you, it's about the other person. So if you were to want to be an engaging conversationalist, it's really around understanding the other party and make use this kind of knowledge in that conversation. So again, it's not always about you, it's always about the other person in the context of wanting to be an engaging conversationalist, right? So I have a question to both of you. I have this inclination. I am not so particular. Okay, this is when a person talking to me and how I get myself to be engaged with this person, or AKA like to talk with this person. So the feeling, the trigger will be from how do I feel when this person is talking to me. So where does this fall into in the VAKAD? Emotion is the feeling.
It's
Maybe
AD.
Darren?
It's AD.
Okay.
Because when you are feeling that way, you're thinking about it. You're thinking about it first. So how do I feel about this person talking to me right now? The energy that the person gives out. So it's more reflective. You are going back to thinking about it. So it's very reflective. A kinesthetic person will not be thinking about that. They'll be matching the energy of the person talking to them. Right? So hence why you're very reflective on that.
So if it's kinesthetic, then is it interrelated to influential, like we discussed last week? Because you're saying about going into the energy part. And
that's a good question. That's a very good question. But there's no evidence of any connection to personality profiling when it comes to learning style, because there could be someone who is an I influencer, and then that person learns through AD as well. I've met many, right? So there's no direct correlation to it, but it has some influences. Just like everything else, there's a little bit of influences here and there. I think maybe the correct word to use is there are some expectations, but not all expectations can be fulfilled. For example, you meet someone who is a D, right, a dominant personality, and you expect the person to be a very visual and auditory kind of person. But sometimes the D person can just be kinesthetic, just langgar dulu baru cerita. So there's no direct correlation, but there are some expectations which can or cannot be true. It all depends on the situation. So the personalities does not always influence the style of learning, but it does have some relation somewhere, but it's not 100%. I've noticed personalities like, for example, I've actually met Tony Fernandez in real life. And if I were to ask you, both of you right now, personality, what do you think he is?
I,
DISC.
personally,
Huh?
I and D.
Omar?
Dominant one is I, perhaps, and also because of the work is D, but probably it's I.
He's actually
Omar?
quite balanced. He's actually quite balanced, looking at the company he's running. But I think he knows how to apply what when. But in private, we don't know what he is.
But what do you think, Omar? As in, cannot be.
What is obvious is that he's meant to be an.
For you? What's that?
What is obvious is that he's an I, because he's quite flamboyant and all of that stuff. But at the same time, there are people who become I because of the role they're playing. So that's why I'm saying he's quite balanced, but we don't know in private what he's like. For all you know, like us, right? We're trainers, and when we're in a workshop, we tend to be an I, but for a lot of us, we're kind of like very private, very quiet. Very reflective.
So you are correct.
What's your
Tony
encounter?
Fernandez.
Yeah, Darren.
You're quite correct. So Tony Fernandez is quite balanced because he's a very smart man. But for my interactions with him, my personal interactions with him, he's actually a C. He's a
Analytical,
C
huh?
first, and then second I.
So what is
But
his,
his
so
I and D,
mm,
his I and D is pretty close.
I
They're
see.
very close. They're like this. So they're probably a point or 2 points away from. So he can switch from the I to the D. Things don't go this way, right? The I is with the people. The D is with the results. But the C is because he's running an organization. Does it make sense now? Because he's very detailed. He's very detailed.
Right.
And he's the kind of person that, for example, if you're talking about learning style, what do you think he is?
I think he's a V, visual. He's more into a big picture.
True. Could be true.
I can't tell. I have no idea.
I would say that if he's talking about AD, definitely there somewhere. But if you're talking about just using the VAK, I would say that he's very VK. Very VK. For example, yes, the big picture, right? Like if you ask, if he wants to ask you a question on how can he utilize the cargo space on board the aeroplanes, Tony Fernandez would have actually crawled into the cargo space himself before he asked you that question. If he wanted to ask you the condition of the tarmac on the runway, he would have put on the Pua Chukang boots and he would have walked the runway himself before he asked you that question. So the kinesthetic value tends to stand out as well. Yeah, so you see what I mean? So when you're talking to a person like Tony Fernandez, right, you got to have the feel. You got to have that moment that connects to him, and you got to ask the right questions. So he goes on that, yeah. So you see, it's different with everybody, of course.
So here's the question. For someone like Tony Fernandez and you're meeting him, how would you carry a conversation with the guy?
He spoke to me twice, but from what I saw, you're right, Omar, he's very visual. So he talks about the bigger picture. How can this be used for this, and how can this get a result for that? So he has that picture in mind. But at the same time, he's a people's person by nature because of his background in music and all that. He connects people. So if he doesn't feel a connection with you, right, he will talk only about facts and figures with you in that sense. But if you start going to, so where are you from, Omar? I heard you were a trainer. So whatever. Once he goes to that level of getting personal with you, and you can get personal with him to a certain level, you connect with him. So because that feel good factor is always very apparent in him. So it's very visual and kinesthetic in that sense.
Right.
The details will come on later. Yeah, the details will be in later.
All right. Let me acknowledge our audience. We have Dr. Ian, Professor Dr. Ian. He said, I produced a 1-hour teaching video yesterday on listening. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. We'll check that out. Another thing I want to ask both of you is that how to, okay, this is probably like, let's go into personal to both of you. Maybe you can start with Darren first. So, Darren, how to buy you in?
Not so much on the facts and figures, not so much on details. I like the big picture, and I like the hands-on approach. So if you were to profile me on VAKAD, I am K first, AD second. So I'm the kind of person that langgar dulu baru fikir. Faham tak? Yeah. So you guys, both of you, fikir dulu baru langgar.
No, that's me. Omar is K first, right? What's your highest, Omar, again? Sorry.
Mine is AD, which is quite
AD as well.
Okay.
Yeah, which means I'm reflective. So what
what
would
buy you in?
Yeah, what would get to me is if you were to ask me something like, "What do you think of?" You know, that will get me going already. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? Right? It get me going because it's reflective. It makes me think. Yeah. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, I think I'm actually the same. So it has to be something like, okay, what I think is this. What do you think? What do you think? But I have this element of feeling. Probably it's the women thing. I have this element of what's the energy around it, right? If it's too
women.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm just talking for myself. I'm not generalizing. Maybe I'm just different. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can be stimulated through that kind of conversation where I think the vision, ideas, opinion. But at the same time, if this person is new, so I will then have this tendency of what's the energy around this person, you know. Then yeah, I can then tweak myself into that. So if it's pleasant, if the energy is pleasant and this person is talking around brain stuff, then yes, I'll get buy in easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The element where you mentioned that you have the emotions, you're actually quite correct. It is a woman's thing, but it's not specific only for women. Men have it too. It's called intuition, because your
Okay.
intuition actually influence your emotions, because once you are having it's like a feel, your gut feel about the situation. So of course when someone asks you questions, so Jack, what are your thoughts on this matter, so you get, oh, okay, but you will also share if your intuition also tells you that sharing with this person is okay, right? But if your intuition say, "Yeah, I don't think I should say too much with this guy or this girl," then your sharing could be limited. It depends on your intuition as well, because women by default, you have higher intuition compared to men. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Omar?
So yeah, so there's a host of applications. You know, whether you're going for an interview or you're meeting someone for the first time.
Yep.
So let's take a couple of scenarios. Okay. Let's say you are in a training room, you know, or you're attending a seminar, and well, today the dynamics are different because everything's online. But if you walk into a seminar and there's people mingling around before they go into the room, um, how could you what kind of clues can you get such that you can start a conversation? So, for example, if I see someone sitting down or standing there and they're looking all over the place, chances are it's visual, right? And I would make a comment about, let's say, the hotel. You know, I could say something like, "What do you think about the decor of this place?" Or you could just say, "Hey, I like that. I like that painting." You know, that could start the conversation going. Some people, if you notice, if you go to like a seminar, while waiting, they're by themselves and they're just thinking, right? And chances are they were reflective, or they're just listening, and observing. So you can ask them about what they think about the seminar. So things like that, yeah.
So to our audience, sorry Omar to cut you. We have actually prepared the questionnaire for short questionnaire for you, but I couldn't find the attachment. How can I attach the photos? Maybe later, or if you really want to know your learning style, you can PM me. I'll send you the questionnaire. It's actually provided by Darren. We have converted that to JPEG, but somehow I couldn't attach it on the comment section. So yeah, Uma?
Yeah. Any more clues, Darren?
It's a bit difficult these days to see clues very obviously, because most times these days, not compared to 5 years ago, these days people are more glued to their handphones wherever waiting to enter a seminar hall and things like that. But you are right, simple gestures like that means you have, if you want to do this, then you have to be quite an observant person. That means you look at a person like what you mentioned just now. If the person's looking around and you ask the person, so what do you think of that chandelier? Yeah. So you could probably kick off a conversation from that. If a person is maybe sitting down reflecting, then you ask the person something more towards a reflective question. So yeah, you can look out for clues that body language does play a part. Another way to look at the clues is also look at the person itself. A visual person tends to focus on colors. Yeah, so when they dress up, they tend to have matching colors, or they stand out in a crowd because visually, right, that's who they are, right? They also see themselves that way. They need to stand out. Whereby an auditory person could be very inclusive and their body language could be a close body language, right? And a kinesthetic person is the one that's going around talking to everybody. and have this need to touch you whenever they talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, that tap on the shoulder, you know, that hug, that kisses. Yeah, so a kinesthetic person tends to be more of that. Yeah, so those could be the body language clues that you could, not just the verbal cues, but the body language clues that you could look out for. I understand that it's getting a bit difficult these days because a lot of times people are glued to their handphones, right? But those are some of the clues that you can look out for in the sense of body language.
Yeah, and in general, you just have to ask questions, you know, and to see what their reaction is like. You can ask visual type questions, you know, auditory type questions like how does it sound? You know, what do you think of this, or how does this look? So based on the way they respond, it gives you a clue as to what they're thinking, right? And then you can just carry the conversation from there. Yeah. Can we make generalizations as well, Darren? Like for instance, kids, they tend to be a certain way, adults tend to be a certain way, right? Like for instance, kids, if we ask them, what do you think about this? I mean, before I understood all this, when I see kids and I ask them, what do you think about this? You can't get anything out of them, right? Because they can't think. You know, they're not into thinking. So you need to be able to ask them, what do you like? Right? Would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? How does this look? So do they change over time?
Generalization, it's just like personality profiling. It changes over time. There is no one way of learning. Their learning styles tends to evolve, and a person who could be visual when they were young end up becoming more AD in their adulthood. So it all depends. But the correct way to approach children would be by default. And these days, I notice that whether it's boy or girls, kinesthetic tends to work better. Meaning to say that you got to get down to their level, and like say for example, you see a child playing with Play-Doh or Lego or whatever, and if you go there, you sit there and you start having conversation, it'll be actually good to ask them, hey, can I play along with you? And then say, sure, why not? So you start fixing things. As you are fixing up the Lego together with their child, when you start having conversation, that would be a buy-in for the child. The child will look at you and say, he's just an overgrown kid. Right? Yeah. So then they will be okay having conversations with you. But if you're going too serious and with arms folded and having a stern face and trying to have a fruitful conversation with a child, they would actually respond in a more logical way. They get defensive just like anybody else would. So yeah. So but like what I mentioned at the beginning of the session, by default, right, girls are usually visual and auditory. By default, boys are usually visual and kinesthetic. So that actually works to a certain level of age, maybe before 16. After 16, because their experiences starts to change, they go to a different level of secondary school, they start going to university, college and all that, their learning style evolves just as well. So that's why you see, if you go to university, whether you like it or not, your kinesthetic nature has to be high. Because why? You got to do presentations, you got to do group studies, you got to have a lot of engagements with people, compared to secondary school where you can just sit by yourself and you can get your 5 years, you can get through 5 years of secondary school just literally on your own, right? Without much engagement. So yeah, it changes over time.
I think that's also sorry, Mom. Let's also come back, or rather, we need to have the awareness that it's not all about us, but it's about the other person, and knowing your inclination, or rather your personality or your learning style, is not for you. I like when Darren mentioned this last week, when it's not for you to box yourself within that perimeter of how you are, but it's rather for you to be able to communicate with others, or mingle with others appropriately, if I can say that.
Yeah.
Of course, there are shortcuts. Yeah, there are shortcuts. You can. Sometimes people say, but Darren, it's so complicated. That means I need to know VAKAD, I need to know DIC, and then a lot of things to have conversations. So go for the shortcuts, which is like example. Be very observant. Like the other day when I went, just before the MCO, I actually was in a meeting session. I noticed that one of the clients, it was a Friday, so it was a dress down day. I noticed that one of the clients, one of the decision maker, the guy was a Liverpool fan because he was wearing a Liverpool jersey. So it's very simple. All I had to do was talk about Liverpool. That's it. Direct connection. Right? So look for the shortcuts, right? It helps sometimes.
I can, sorry, Amma, sorry. I want to say, like people like me, because you see the cue. So probably a person that you, when you are meeting this person, look for a cue that familiar to you, right? Because if I know nothing about football, of course I do, but if when I see those jersey, I wouldn't be able to. I can just acknowledge, but nothing else after that. So perhaps it's also around acknowledging things that you have something to offer to that person, and then you have conversation around it. Okay, Omar.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, you guys have you beat me to the punch. All the questions I wanted to ask you, you asked. But I just wanted to say this. You know what I really like about Malaysia is that people are so friendly, and you can have conversations just like that, right? You can just walk by a stranger, and if he's wearing something, let's say a nice T-shirt with something funny on it, you can just say "Cantik baju," you know, hey, boom, you're friends, right? Whereas
I like to, sorry,
in the
Omar,
US,
Omar, I have to cut you in that because I would like to acknowledge Omar. If you walk with Omar, he can talk to anyone. Like we are in an elevator, he can engage conversation with anyone regardless. Makcik-makcik ke, you know, those bosses ke. And I've been noticing that a lot. Strangers. And Omar will like talk to this person and like having a real conversation. I'm like, oh wow, that's really great. Okay, Omar.
Yeah.
okay, I didn't realize that. Yeah, but I find that is I wasn't like that before, and I guess I must have observed other people, and I found that when you connect with people, you'll discover a whole new world, and it's always fun. It used to be that whenever I'm in a group of people, I would just not talk. In fact, I was very judgmental before. You know, I look at people and I go, I don't like that one. I don't like this one. This one's too shabby. This one's too stuck up. And I would just try to pick someone that is acceptable before I sit next to them. But then at some point I changed, and I said to myself, I just want to discover. And that's when I would just sit next to someone and find a way to engage. And you'll be surprised at the kind of stuff that, the kind of person the stranger is. I've met young people who are successful entrepreneurs that put me to shame. You know, I found people doing fantastic things. So it's really incredible. So now today I would just try to talk to people. And besides, there's nothing better than to say something and you put a smile on somebody's face. You know, you put a smile on their face, makes you feel good, right? You're just sharing a lot of positive energy. So it's really nice. So my question is this. If we can wrap this up, right? Obviously, for conversations to be engaging, there's a lot more stuff that you need to take into account. Like we have not covered body language or mirroring and things like that, right? But these are things that people tend to be intuitive about, right? And like I mentioned in the beginning, there's really no hard and fast rules about how to be engaging in a conversation. So what you really need to do is to be aware of some of these elements that we discussed. So my final question is this. Besides understanding all of these things, what can prepare you to what can prepare you? I mean, you know all this theory, right? So what's the next step? So you go out there and you see a stranger, what are you going to do?
Omar, repeat the question, Omar, because you were breaking.
Mine was not clear? Okay. I guess what I'm asking is, now that we've shared some of these dynamics within conversations, what would make you become a good conversationalist? I mean, knowing is not enough, right? So what can make you become a good conversationalist?
Good question. Go back to the 3 C's. Because I think the 3 C's tend to play a very macro view on a lot of things. I like the second C, which is care, because care means to me that if you want to be a great conversationalist, be genuine, be actual genuine. If you ask questions to someone, it's like, you know, these days people, and in the corporate world, I notice when you see people in the lift and people want to say good morning to you, so it's like so difficult.
Precisely.
Right? Like it's like gold coming out from the mouth. So be genuine. When you say good morning to someone, really mean it, because people know when you mean it. So genuine, be genuine. I would say that if you're genuine, everything else falls into place eventually. But if you're not genuine, knowing all these tools doesn't really matter, because you don't care to use them. you're not genuine enough. You become a hypocrite. So that's not a good thing. Be genuine about it. And you're right, Jacqueline, about Omar connecting to people very easily. And I also tend to do that. I can talk to almost anybody I wish to talk to.
Yeah.
And you should have seen me and Omar in the lift with a whole bunch of the J students going up to our classes. We were having conversations. We were laughing like nobody's business in the lift. When the lift opened, the hotel guests were looking at us like, okay, what is going on here? You know, it's like they get scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of lifts, hang on, Jack. Let me throw this challenge. The next time you walk into a lift, or before you walk in, when the door opens and there's people inside, greet them. Just greet them.
It
You
helps.
know? Yeah, and
Helps.
you'll be surprised. So some people will have a shocked look in their face. Some people will just ignore you, they look away, and some people will actually acknowledge you. And usually the older ones will acknowledge you. You know, it's amazing. And I think the answer to being a good conversationalist is just simply to just try it. And there's no better place to try it than in Malaysia. It's so easy. You can just go up to someone and then you make eye contact and you just say, "Sudah makan?" That's it. You know, that's standard question, "Dah makan?" You know, that kind of stuff, right?
Tapi kan, I pelik lah suddenly if someone meet me and dah makan.
No. Okay. All right.
Suddenly, dah makan? Siapa ni? Tak pernah jumpa pun.
Yeah, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I mean. If I walk into a restaurant, I'm not going to go to the first guy and say, "Dah makan," you know, it's going to be weird. But if there is eye contact, like this person is looking at me and I'm looking at that person, I will just nod and I will say, "Dah makan." And it actually happened to me. I was in, there was one weekend, I decided to just go out for a drive. This was pre-MCO days. And I drove to Bentong. You know, I just drove to Bentong. There's a hot spring there. Yes. People tell me there's a hot spring there, so I went, and there is a hot spring there, and there is a resort. And then I started to get hungry, so I walked to the restaurant, and there was a guy sitting by himself at the table, right? And he had some I don't know, nasi goreng or something like that, and we made eye contact. And he said, "Sorang, you know, are you alone?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he says, "Why don't you join me?" And we did. Turns out that this guy was a businessman. You know, he was a very successful businessman. He owned a sawmill and some other businesses. It was amazing. And I heard his story about how he was in a corporate environment and he left and became an entrepreneur. Amazing. So inspiring. You know, so, and obviously he had conversational skills. Yeah. And that was what made him successful, because he said before that he was quiet as well. You know, so conversations can actually take you places. It's amazing.
I would like to add on that. I totally agree with Darren and you, Omar, but I still have this sort of like a reserve around it. Probably it's in the personality in myself. It's still around going out of a comfort zone, because when I'm surrounded with strangers, without any significant transaction. What I meant by that is that it's not around a potential business transaction, or you know, it's something that you have to, you know, to be appearing in such a way. So I'm putting myself in your shoes, in your situation with that guy at the gerai. Yeah? If I'm in that situation, probably I will not strike the first conversation, because it's still me, right? So again, answering your question, how to be a good or be an engaging conversationalist, I think is, again, people like me will need to go out of that comfort zone and you know, be okay with opening your mouth first. So therefore, it's also around do not have the fear of being rejected or being given that funny faces when, you know, someone look at you like, siapa ni, tak kenal pun, kind of stuff, right? So
that
baby steps lah. You take baby steps.
True.
Yeah, like for example, sorry, Omar, just to kind of like add on to Jack, like if you're sitting in the car, in a Grab car, right? So most people do this, they'll be on their phones or they will be plugged in and They just cut off from the world. So instead of doing that, because it's just you and the guy who's driving the car, the Grab driver, just take off, I mean, put the phone aside and just have normal conversation. How long have you been doing this? How is it in driving a Grab car? Is it tough? When you have those basic conversations with them, it actually, it is enriching to you, because you never know, like what Omar found out about that guy in the restaurant, you never know who you're talking to, and
Yeah.
the experience that this guy said, it's going to enrich you. So if you look at it at a point where it's going to enrich you to know
Enrich,
about
yeah.
people, yeah, so I think it's fun. So take baby steps, like maybe in a Grab car or something. Like don't have to suddenly, Jacqueline, don't have to go into a lift and suddenly talk to 10 people at one time.
Well,
That
actually,
living, yeah.
actually, I am on my way to on that. I've been doing a lot of this, going out of comfort zone, talking to strangers, especially when I'm traveling alone on my own solo trip, right? I cannot be not talking to strangers, right? Especially direction and stuff. So, and
Yeah.
also like, when you are on solo trip, you are meeting a lot of these solo travelers all over the world. That's how you make friends. And
Yeah.
yeah, I've been doing that. I'm just imagining if, for someone that, wanting to improve. So I think the first step is like Darren mentioned, take a baby step. And
Yeah.
but most importantly, you want to get out of that comfort zone of yours, not to
Exactly.
talking
Yeah.
to strangers. Yeah.
Yeah, like everything else, it's a question of getting used to. Once
Yeah.
you do it often, you get used to it. And like I said, I wasn't very talkative before to strangers, but now I don't even think about it. So when you mentioned that I talk to strangers,
Yeah.
that I didn't even think about that. Now the thing is this, and you're right. When you are talking to a stranger, you need to be careful about this man-woman thing as well. I mean, I don't just look at a girl who's looking at me, or we happen to make eye contact, and I just say, "Hey, join me." Makan apa? I don't do that. Yeah. But so you need to know what the social acceptable norms are as well. Yeah.
Right. Wow,
Yeah.
interesting conversation today. I think, like Darren mentioned, if you know the tools, you have all the knowledge and skill, but you don't have it inside you, the care, um, the genuine feeling of wanting to be connected with that person, you can be felt. I mean, people
Yeah.
like me, we are, I mean, we are really, how to say, sensitive around the gut feel itself, around the energy around it, right? So yeah, thank you so much, guys. I think this is the last part of our topic on how to be an engaging conversationalist. We
Yep.
have we have this every Wednesday, but next Wednesday we have a new topic. Probably Darren, you would like to say something on our new topic, which is 6 human needs from Tony Robbins. Perhaps a little bit of introduction on that, Darren?
Wow. Okay. So yes, it's going to be another interesting Wednesday next week. 6 Human Needs by Tony Robbins. If you have read his book, Awakening the Giant from Within, he talks a lot about the 6 human needs. So if we have done our VEC, which is the value illustration system you guys mentioned, remember back then, where we talk about individual defined values. These are individual defined human needs, but on a macro level. So everybody has their needs, and the best thing about these needs is another form of profiling. So we're gonna, next week when we do this, we are gonna profile both of you and our new speaker coming on board, I hope, next week. And you guys will have to do your human needs arrangement, and then we can talk from there. It's gonna be very nice. It's gonna be very nice.
Interesting.
Great.
All right. So if you notice, our audience, we have a few tools that we have introduced. If you want us to give you those or provide you rather the assessment, do reach out. You can PM me. I can send it to you because we can't attach that on the comment section. Yeah, I mean anytime. If in case you are watching this recording, by all means, if you need those, we can supply. We can provide it to you, right?
Yeah.
So Omar, anything that you would like to?
Yeah, one last comment. Besides getting out of your comfort zone and being comfortable talking to strangers, be aware of what's going on. Be aware of what's going on, meaning be knowledgeable. Know what's going on, read stuff, so that you can have a conversation. Like for instance, the reason why I have the planet in the back of my background is SpaceX and NASA collaborated into going to space, to the space station. You know, so we have things like that, right? And I actually rehearse. You know, now it's become kind of automatic what to say to people, but I actually rehearse. What can I say? What can I talk about? How can I ask these questions? You know, so you need to be a thinking conversationalist as well. Yeah, so that's my tip.
Right. So in short, Omar, what does a conversation coach do in a program that if I were to go and meet or to have a conversation coach? In short.
Right. Okay, good question. A lot of times it's about not speaking up. Like for instance, my last coachee was a manager, but he only talks about work. He talks about work and he doesn't engage at all with anybody else. And in a way, his career was kind of stuck, you know, because he wasn't moving anywhere. Nobody knows what he thinks, how he feels. So he needed to be able to get out of that comfort zone such that he's talking. Right, so a lot of it is around confidence. Confidence is around getting used to something that you're not used to, and about understanding the various dynamics that goes on within a conversation. The other aspect about coaching and conversation is knowing what kind of questions to ask, what kind of languaging to use. You know, like for instance, I learned a lot about solution-based conversations from Captain Chan, you know, who talks about making statements that are, or asking questions that produce solutions rather than dwell on problems, right? So that changes the entire discussion and the entire flavor altogether. So there are many aspects of conversations that can produce results. So essentially, I help people create results through knowing, through having better understanding of the dynamics of conversations. Yeah.
And it's a continuous learning. I'm so blessed to be surrounded with people like Omar because you know, I learned a lot from him, but particularly in how to articulate my opinion, my idea, and also, yeah, of course, now improving my conversation skill. All right. So we are at the end of the program, but before we go, let me give you a bit of snippets, yeah, for our upcoming, or which is tomorrow, tomorrow's program, which is, let me share the screen. Quick snippets about tomorrow. Okay, so for tomorrow, we will have an inspiration session for Point of View series. We are privileged to have my good friend. Her name is Suri Daman, or full name Suryati Daman. She has been in business many years, more than 10 years. In fact, she has a very interesting background. She used to be working as a biologist in the US, and then she came back to Malaysia, and she started her business in fashion industry, really. And with that, she managed to reach the international level. In fact, she was in Dubai Fashion Week. And not only that, she has been experiencing a lot of these ups and downs in business, and not only one brand, but she made 4 more brands, also in the line of fashion and clothing, and also in cosmetic. And now she has her one brand called Hajira, and at the same time, Hajira is basically a Muslimah wear, mainly for hijab, yeah. And at the same time, she also managed a kindi, yeah. So interesting about her is that what's interesting about my friend, she's an amazing lady. Her personality is really, when you describe a person who has this determination, passion, that's her. In fact, I silently, I actually, I she is my idol, especially in particular, because without her knowing that, because I always observe her in how she does her work, and tomorrow she will be sharing her stories, yeah, around how she built 5 brands from scratch, one after another, of course, and she made it on the world stage and plunged into deep valleys, and then restarted business using other people's money, OPM, and now climbing the peak again. All right, so tune in for tomorrow. It will be 2:30 to 3:30 with Suri Daman.
Yeah, we've been featuring all these amazing women. I got to get on the ball and start finding some amazing men.
Yes, yes. Yeah, look forward. So for our viewers, thank you so much for dropping by. Thank you so much. And again, this is a call for everyone. If you have something that you would like to share with the audience, or you have your own audience and you want to be part of this point of view series, by all means, we also want to learn from you. This is not only for us, but also for everyone, you know, to learn from each other. And thank you so much, Darren. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your support. And to our audience, thank you again. So we'll see you tomorrow, 2:30 to 3:30. So bye-bye. We'll end the Facebook Live.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you.
Luckily, you managed study, Darren. What happened?
What's that?
Oh, luckily, you managed study.